Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our first strategy and resources meeting of 2023. I hope you all had a good break. Happy New Year to you all. So my first item is actually a briefing note to welcome everyone, officers and members of the public to the meeting. And a reminder, please, to switch off your mobile phones to silent. I think we've got some public coming in today, so I'll ask them to switch off their microphone, please, to avoid any disruption during the meeting. The meeting will be recorded and will be available in due course on the council's YouTube channel. A reminder for councillors to ensure those attending virtually can hear the proceedings, but I don't think that actually applies today, does it? So we haven't got the councillors on anyway, so that's okay. It's a formal meeting, of course, and so we should not be referring to each other by first names. Okay, so that's the briefing note dealt with. So first of all, then, apologies for absence, please.
Yes, Chair, received apologies from Councillor Yabsley.
Thank you very much. And number two, I take it we haven't any more. I think we're all here apart from, yeah. To approve is a correct record the minutes of the meeting that were held on the 5th of December 2022. Will somebody kindly move? Thank you, Nettie. Seconder? Councillor Lofthouse, sorry. I've already got it wrong, haven't I? Councillor Pearson and Councillor Lofthouse, thank you. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Chairman, we want unanimous because I wanted the last meeting.
Oh, you, okay. Sorry, I thought I saw your hand up. All right, there you go. Right, thank you for, I take it you're abstaining.
Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Right, now, item number 3, items that, which in the opinion of the chair should be considered by the meeting as a matter of urgency. We have one item that I think would be good if we spend a little bit of time on, and that's the Local Authority Housing Fund, which I'll ask our Chief Executive to talk about in a minute. And after the meeting is over, if we could just briefly stay for a quick catch up regarding the central car park toilets in Barnstaple. But over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This is a fund, members, that was released just before Christmas, a couple of days before Christmas. And you may have seen something about it in the press. It's a £500 million national fund, and it's intended to provide local authorities with capital funding to increase the housing stock and support those areas which have seen larger numbers of Ukrainian refugees housed and also refugees housed through the Afghan schemes. The purpose of the scheme is to ensure that there's settled accommodation available to those that have entered the country on a visa to those two schemes. And it's also intended to support those areas where housing pressures are being experienced as a result of the operation of those schemes. It's a scheme that is for stock acquisition, but that could be any or all of either purchasing units themselves, building units, refurbishing council property, refurbishing non-local authority property, utilising empty properties, or even working with other organisations such as RSLs and housing providers to provide that accommodation. And it's for local authorities to decide the appropriate mechanism which enables them to deliver at speed on those objectives. For North Devon Council, there's two elements to the scheme in terms of the funding. The main element provides the opportunity for £800,000 worth of capital funding, with an expectation that we will deliver a minimum of 8 units. There's also what's called the bridging element, which provides an additional just over £200,000 of capital funding. And the expectation there is that that be used to deliver a minimum of 1 larger 4-bed plus property, which will then be used to house people that are currently occupying accommodation in the locality. The scheme has some pretty ambitious timetables. So the funding is intended to be delivered in two tranches and it'll be split 30-70. The first tranche of 30% is going to be paid in February or March this year, so in the next couple of months. And the second tranche will be paid in two instalments, with the final instalment being 5 months after payment of tranche one, so around August time. But we only have access to the second tranche if we've spent 60% of tranche one. So you can see there's pretty ambitious timetables there. So we'll receive tranche one in February or March, and the expectation is that 60% of that will be spent by August this year. There are limits on how much grant can be used for each purchase, and in most cases that appears to be 40% of the purchase price can be grant funded. And the expectation is that the local authorities or the housing providers that we're partnering with will deliver the remaining 60% of the capital funds. The expectation is that all of the homes will be delivered on an affordable, low-cost basis, with local authorities deciding the tenure and the levels of rent, with the precondition that they have to be in accordance with the objectives of the scheme. The intention is also that once the accommodation is no longer needed for people that are being housed on the Ukrainian or Afghan schemes, that they will go within our general housing and will be made available for anybody that is in need of affordable housing. There is a possibility that grant that has been automatically allocated to local authorities nationally will be reallocated if those local authorities decide not to take up the funding or aren't able to comply with the terms and conditions. So if we are going to go for it, then we also need to be prepared to put more money in, if you like, and receive more money out, and purchase more units than the minimum that has been mentioned. Just in relation to the bridging element, as I said, just over £200,000 has been allocated under that part of the scheme. But that funding and also the funding under the main element is conditional on the district council increasing the number of pledges that we've made to support people under the Afghan and Ukrainian schemes. And it's made clear that if we don't increase the pledges, then the funding won't come to the district council. So that's it pretty much in a nutshell. As I said, it came to us just before Christmas. The first of the webinars provided a bit more information about it is this morning. Another one on Thursday, so officers will be attending those to get a bit more information. But as officers have pointed out, there's some immediate challenges that spring to mind. The first is that we have to fund approximately 60% of the purchase, which for a small local authority is about, our size is quite a considerable amount of money, especially when you're talking about 8-9 properties. Because of the speed, there's every chance that unless we can enter into an arrangement with a housing provider, we're going to be buying houses on the open market. And so chances are it won't mean an overall increase in the supply of housing coming forward. It'll be us purchasing housing that would have been available anyway. There's also issues around community tensions, because if we go ahead and accept the money and purchase and allocate properties to people on the Afghan and Ukrainian schemes, then there's the possibility that causes community tensions. As we've seen, there are housing issues in this area, quite considerable housing issues, and we have quite active Facebook groups that are promoting housing for people that are in desperate need already in the area. So we need to be aware of that. Obviously, the timetables are really tight. And the other issue that we need to address is how we actually hold the properties. If we purchase these properties, how do we hold them? Because we're not a housing provider. We don't have a housing stock ourselves. We don't have a housing company that we can run it through yet. And so we need to address those issues as well. As I said, the timetable is really tight. We've got until the 25th of January to submit our bid, if you like, setting out exactly how we will use it. And so Jeremy and his officers and partners will be now considering what best scheme that we can put forward, but I wanted to raise it with you because obviously there'll be no opportunity to bring this to a formal committee before the 25th of January. And so any submission would have to be done under the urgency procedure, but members need to be aware of it. And if members have any thoughts on whether we should be applying for it or not, then, we'd gladly hear them, whether at this meeting or before the 25th of January. Thank you.
Thank you. That sums it up really well, doesn't it?
That's the information we've got at the moment.
Yeah, thank you. There's lots and lots of challenges concerning it. I don't know whether you wanted to add any more, Jeremy, at this stage to what Ken has said. I mean, he sums it up very well.
Yeah, nothing to add, Chair. As Ken mentioned, I think the government seminars this week would be really useful and hopefully provide some further guidance to us.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Katrina.
Gosh, well, it seems like, yet again, the government's come up with a half-assed idea about people from somewhere and trying to help them. Then the schemes have started to fall apart and they're looking to local authorities to bail them out. Do we know if there's going to be any downside to us if we were to say that we couldn't do it?
I guess the downside would be perception, because we have been raising the issue about, the increased risk on our homelessness budget. If people that have entered the country through those perfectly valid schemes suddenly are made homeless because of the breakdown in their, the relationship with their hosts. All local authorities have been raising that as a possibility. And this is the government's response to that risk, is to say to the authorities, well, okay, we've got that risk, then this is a fund that you can tap into to create more housing, take the pressure off your homelessness services, etc., etc. So I think that the risk is the perception if you don't go for it.
Yes, Councillor Notkin.
Well, the thought that comes to mind is that there was a figure bandied about of over 1,000 second homes in the area. And we could grab some of those for this particular scheme. Well, it's just that we're not taking away from the marketplace because they wouldn't be available probably to sort of people that need homes. But the longer term thing would be that they would be available for local people, possibly. If the Ukrainians or Afghans move on or go back to their country, when hostilities perhaps going in and hopefully soon. But that's the only thing. But it's like everything, isn't it? It's putting us up against the wall in terms of the timescales. Things don't happen that quickly. You're looking for properties. No. Difficult one.
It doesn't give us any powers to, compulsorily purchase properties or anything like that. So we wouldn't be able to get a list of second homeowners.
No, I know. That's the thing. Difficult thing about it.
Yeah, and as you say, the timescales are so tight. If we've got to spend 60% of the first tranche of 30% by August to gain access to the other funds, then we have to move really quick in the marketplace. And that's why I say I think because of those timescales, that's the route most authorities will be driven down, I think, unless they've got schemes already coming through in the pipeline.
Yeah.
Councillor Knight.
It's not a fix or a suggestion, but I would strongly say we need to look at communication, transparency and communication so that the public are really aware that this money is only specifically for that purpose. These Facebook groups, we don't need to give any sort of glimmer of sort of annoyance that this money is only for this purpose and we can only use it for that purpose and our hands are tied. So just communicating that clearly to the public if the scheme progresses.
Yeah, we have a meeting set up on Friday with the housing group, so we will be making that clear.
Councillor Pratt.
Chair, it seems to me that the only quick way to do something on this sort of scale is with a RSL partner. Simple as that. And I think it's either North Devon Homes or Live West. You need somebody with the capacity to deal with something like this. And they must have a model that allows them, you know, with a 40% direct grant, to be able to make the finances work and still keep them affordable in the longer term. And I would suggest that that's the route we should support. I mean, I'm okay, we can go and borrow 1.5 million or whatever we need to borrow. But we just won't be able to move fast enough and, you know, we'll end up failing. I don't mean that in a rude way, but you know, we ain't going to be able to deliver it on our own. So, I mean, I'm strongly, I mean, there are deals going on every day, aren't there, with Live West, with private developers. There would be a way that they could, you know, get this sort of package together, I would have thought. And then, you know, we got to then let's be bold about it. The long-term benefits for North Devon are really good. Yeah. There's a majority, certainly the Ukrainian people, going to go back home, quite rightly. So, you know, we're talking about a long-term solution here. So I'm not worried about being embarrassed about it. I think we ought to be proud of it if we do it. But I think, you know, my suggestion would be we ought to get on as soon as possible and talk to them in like the next 24 hours and say, you know, which one of you is going to step up to the plate and help us deliver this? Because you know, I'm just thinking of some of the developments that are in around Barnstable that they're involved in already in a big way, especially Live West. So, you know, I've seen that would be the way to deliver it because their model would suit this, wouldn't it? Because very often they make it work with borrowing against their own stock when they get an injection of cash. So I would have thought they could make it work, Chair. So I think we should do it.
And we have opened up that dialogue anyway with certainly the local providers.
But I think the important thing is that if you get the opportunity on these webinars to feed anything back is to talk about the timescales and all, you know, all the challenges that it's putting on small local authorities like ourselves. Because it's just, you know, so tight. It's almost unbelievable that they should come up with such a scheme.
Is it?
Well, okay. We don't put anything past it. Yeah, I won't make a political point.
Yeah, sorry, just one other point, but some of this money then, are we able to use some of this money because we're obviously taking up officers' time, which should be used elsewhere. So are we able to plug into some of this money to cover for that cost?
No, as far as I'm aware, it's just capital.
Yeah. Right. So that puts extra strain on our own budgets then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for raising it and pointing out all the pitfalls and challenges and so on. It's something that we obviously need to pursue and see where it takes us, but it's going to be a real challenge if we're going to do it. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 4. Have we any declarations of interest today?
I've received none, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item number 5 is to agree the agenda between Part A and Part B. I'm suggesting, if members don't mind, that we actually bring item 10 after item 7, because we have Jeremy Mann with us this morning, and that would free him up afterwards to go to the webinar if it still existed. At least to do some other work anyway, rather than sitting through the whole meeting. If members are happy with that, are we okay with that? Yeah. Thank you. Okay. So, item 6 then, the Devon Carbon Plan, and over to you, please, Donna.
Okay, so hopefully you'll remember that the Devon Carbon Plan has been to this meeting several times over the last 3 years. But we finally approved the text of the plan last year, and it was officially launched on the 27th of September. And this paper is really, we've been asked by Devon County Council and the Climate Emergency Partnership if we as a council would formally endorse the plan. So that's all I'm really asking today, is that you'll endorse the plan that we'd already approved, and that you will recommend that we continue to work with the Devon Climate Emergency Partnership to attempt to reach net zero by 2050 and hopefully get to the good bit, which is the delivery rather than the policy, because I know that we're all a bit fed up with policy coming back. So this sort of sets the the roadmap now for doing some good deliveries. So that's the two recommendations, that you endorse the carbon plan and that you resolve to continue to work in collaboration with the partnership to reduce carbon emissions across the county.
Thank you. Any comments, members? Any questions, any points? Yes.
Can I just ask, how does that work with, I think this council talked about 2030 by meeting that target. How does that work between suggesting here 2050 and the district council endorsing something which is, or maybe endorsing something which is 20, we endorse 2030, but in actual fact, you're gonna end up endorsing 2050. That's.
Yeah, there is a difference, but I'll let Donna actually explain
The
why.
2030 target relates to council operations, so it's what as North Devon Council as a business wants to do. We want to reach net zero by 2030. The Devon Carbon Plan is for the wider county, so all the residents and businesses, so it's the whole lot, and that's 2050, and that's in line with the government's commitment for the UK to be net zero by 2050 as well. So that's why there's two different dates, and that's actually reflected in our own climate emergency commitment and in our environment policy. So yes, should maybe explain that.
Thank you. Anyone else like to make any points or yes?
I will move the recommendation actually, because I think, yeah.
Yeah. Moved by councillor Pearson, seconded by councillor Petrinos. All those in favour, please show. That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much, Donna. And thank you for what you sent me before Christmas. It's going to be next week, okay? Right, moving on then to item 7, and we're going to look at housing standards, letters from the Secretary of State. Over to you, please, Jeremy.
Thank you, Chairman. So just before Christmas, the Chief Executive received 2 communications in relation to damp and mold issues. Quite a strong representation you'll see from Secretary of State.
Yeah.
And in essence, we've been asked to provide our understanding of housing conditions in North Devon and set out our interventions in relation to addressing damp and mold issues. So you can see in the information that I've provided today, the 2 communications from government and my response 13th of December, which sets out, say, what I think is a reasonably good and current understanding of housing conditions in North Devon, and the whole series then of interventions that I believe are addressing that area of concern, addressing other concerns regarding the prevalence of hazards in housing. We've had a further communication and a further instruction from government that we make, in essence, provide the same information again, but in a pro forma that government has now provided. And I think the deadline for that is the early 20th of this month. So that's not an onerous responsibility because we've already sent the information the first time around. I thought it would just be useful then for us to reflect on housing standards issues in relation to the concern that now has been expressed in relation to one specific hazard. So when I look at, if I could just refer you to the presentation. So the council's private sector housing responsibilities are set out on the screen. They are about work that reduces the prevalence of category 1 and category 2 hazards. So hazards in accommodation that can cause harm. Damp and mold is one of 20 plus hazards recognised in the guidance. We've got responsibilities to ensure that there is satisfactory provision of amenities in rented accommodation, so bathrooms, that type of thing. We address overcrowding, have licensing responsibilities for houses of multiple occupation, responsibilities for the promotion of home energy efficiency. We undertake illegal eviction investigations, and we also have work, a very significant capital programme that looks after the administration of DFG's grants for disabled people. I think it's really important that we just keep this issue of damp and mould in the context of our wider responsibilities for private sector housing, and the fact that this is one area of hazard, one area of concern. There are, say, 20 other hazards that are also recognised to cause serious concern. So when we look down and we consider damp and mould in more detail, the principal cause of damp and mould in rented accommodation is one of condensation. So damp air impacting on a cold surface, more likely then to see situations of mould growth. So that is a combination then of too much water vapour in the air impacting on a cold surface. And when I look at the focus of the council's current work, particularly in around the promotion of home energy efficiency, we are focusing a huge amount of our effort and resources in an area of work that reduces the prevalence of damp and mould hazards, although maybe historically we've not actively highlighted that as a principal objective, but that is a consequence of those programmes of work. So it's not my intention at this time, notwithstanding the fact that we've been required to provide this additional information to government, I don't think it's appropriate at this time for us to change or revise our existing programmes of action, because it's important that we work effectively on all those areas of concern that I set out on my second slide. And there's a risk here that we become a little bit too demand-led to a central government directive. It's really important, I think, that we just reflect on the needs of our community, and the issues that we have here are for old homes, hence the focus of our effort in relation to the promotion of home energy efficiency. So, purpose of today, to acquaint you with the kind of the ask of government and the information that we've been required to provide, but also to give you reassurance that I think our programmes of activity are commensurate to the needs of our community, and I don't think they should be changed at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Loftus.
Fine. Thank you for putting all the work in and providing this information. I question why government are actually now sort of knee-jerk reaction to what happened and asking for it, and what will come of that. Because we're, as you say, we're already doing the things we should be doing and concentrating on trying to improve conditions for our local residents so they don't have these problems. What do you think the outcome will be, other than the government just collecting information, which is, again, putting an extra strain on officers' time?
So, Chairman, there are concerns as regards the prevalence of category 1 and 2 hazards in accommodation. It is an unsatisfactory state of affairs that maybe 1 in 5 properties in North Devon has a serious Cat 1, Cat 2 hazard. So there is work to be done. So I don't in any way belittle the challenge of improving housing standards. And there are clearly situations across the country where properties are blighted by damp and mould issues, and people's health is being compromised as a result of those issues. So I would expect to see some further clarification from government as regards the manner in which they would ask us to regulate. I think there will be further guidance, particularly in relation to the social housing sector. I think they're anticipating that. But it's really important for us to make sure that our activity is, is commensurate to the needs of our community and is addressing all of those areas of concern, all of those areas of responsibility that we have for private sector housing.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, councillor Knight, and then councillor Pearson.
The damp and mold problem is a huge problem, particularly with the cost of living crisis and energy costs, because we're kind of beholden to the homeowner or resident or person using that property to actually heat the property. Because if you look at the evidence on the internet, the minute the property dips down below 16, 18 degrees, those surfaces can be 10 degrees or below. And the minute you have even just breathing in a house, that produces condensation, which isn't being dealt with. The only real fundamental way is to use dehumidifiers to remove condensation, which are much more efficient than heating a house, to ridiculous proportions. So I don't see how we can tackle the mold problem or damp and mold. The only real way to do it is to provide insulation. Solid walls need insulating outside, and there's a huge amount of work that needs to be done. So yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword triple-edged sword really, of all sorts of problems. I mean, I've even got mold in my house, which is heated reasonably, but you can't get rid of it once it's in the walls or in the fabric of the wall. It's there. So yeah, it's a very, very serious problem, particularly with the cost of living. It's kind of added another layer to it that people aren't. I mean, I've had information, people are saying they're not turning the heating on, and that just makes the problem worse.
We've seen evidence now of people taking out, removing gas from their homes, because of the concern around, cost of heating. And that is a really sad situation, and it is a really difficult time for many people, because the issue is that factor of water vapour impacting on cold surfaces. That it's relatively simple science. It's removal of the water vapour or warming up those surfaces, or a combination of the two. When we hear situations, particularly in social housing, of people removing their gas because of concern around bills, it's a really worrying.
Absolutely. Yeah, councillor Pearson and then councillor Lang.
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Is there any funding with this? I mean, it seems to me that one of the bigger things we should be doing across the country is making sure that all our housing is up to a decent standard. And it seems to me also that if the government is that interested in doing something, there should be some funding to help us achieve it. I presume at the moment that's not on the table.
So the government has made available a raft of programs to promote home energy efficiency. In the documentation on that, you'll see reference to things like HUGs and home upgrade grants. There's eco grants. So there's a raft of interventions available. There's Eco4 that's available for us. What we need to ensure in our work, and this is much wider than a housing service, we need to make sure that we maximise the benefit of these schemes for local residents. So we need to make sure that our marketing, our infrastructure is right. Our partnerships are right, so our relationships with 361, all of those types of things are in place, and we can maximise that inward investment. So there are schemes. It would be uncharitable to say there are no schemes. And also we direct our own, we direct our own resources through the Better Care Fund also to support home energy efficiency. So we are
doing what we can.
We are.
We're under the-
Yeah, I mean, my concern is that some of these funds are time limited, aren't they? Or are they not? They're just, they're rolling.
Yeah, so some of the programs are capped.
Yeah.
The eco for arrangements moving forward, we should be, one about our expression, dining out on that, and that's in maximising the level of investment that we can bring to North Devon through that funding arrangement.
The truth is that we need massive retrofitting
Yeah, we do.
of properties throughout the areas. Councillor Lane.
Chairman, if you do actually look at the numbers on the appendix D, I mean, the reality is what Mr. Gould is looking for. Like for instance, 1920, identified 239 number and eliminated one. If you go to 2021, you get 26 and eliminated one. Well, if he wants the evidence to support that we're not doing going to be mold, he probably got it because that's better the authorities to say. I would say that you, Jeremy, is the right way forward. Look at the whole picture, not some of it. And quite honest with you, ventilate, I mean, mold proof in properties, there's a lot of, don't think you, because you've got to put a lot of insulation in a property, you've got to solve the problem with mold proof, because you shouldn't. Because in that, you actually physically ventilate it. And try to educate the people who live there as well, because the bottom line is, what I can see, and I know it happens, people hang a washing in the house to dry it, and that's a disaster because you're creating more damp air in that property. So it's not all about what Mr. Cole would be. I mean, he got the evidence there to say that we're not doing nothing, but that's fact, if you look at the overall picture, we are doing something. But I think really we need to educate people, and we all need to look at which is the best way forward in putting all this insulation in, won't necessarily deal with it. You're going to ventilate properly as well. That's all I'm saying to that.
Yeah.
It's not just one fix, it's a complete fix.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you, Jeremy, for bringing that to our attention and keep up the good work right across the board, not just with mould, but with the other 20 plus hazards as well.
Can I ask a very quick question?
Yeah, please.
Are we licensing HMOs now? And is it a condition of the license that they have certain things in place? So, yeah.
Right, thank you. Let's move on then to item 10, which is the North Devon building control situation. Back to you again, Jeremy.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is a paper which seeks to address current workforce deficits in building control. It is a really challenging marketplace for us to recruit building control officers. This is probably one of the areas where we are most attracted by private sector competition. And the government fairly recently has allowed, has opened a marketplace to improved inspectors. Those organisations are seeking to kind of expand their businesses and are providing very attractive packages. And there has been a movement of people away from local government, not just in North Devon, but more widely to private. I believe that we need to recognise the fact that we are in a challenging marketplace for building control officers. And this is a proposal to increase our building control fees by 8%, which would enable us then to provide a market supplement of 10% to our building control surveyor posts. We would hope that intervention would make us more attractive in the marketplace and give us the opportunity then to address the workforce deficits that are currently impacting on the service.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hopkins.
Appreciate the problems we're having. It's obviously not just the building control across the council. But how would that, because we're in competition with the private sector, how would that put our fees to the customers in comparison to the private sector? Are we still going to be competitive, which will allow us to take this action?
Absolutely. So the officers have analysed the local marketplace and with absolute confidence can report that this wouldn't, we don't anticipate this proposal would have any impact on our market share.
Thank you.
Well, that was the critical question that you asked, thank you. Any other points? Or are we happy to, go with the recommendation? Go.
Chairman, I mean, I declare a personal interest in it, was a good, say, pecuniary, and I actually do deal with the pool control. But the reality is, and I think what you're doing, well, I'm saying again, is the right move, because quite honest with you, it's done in the marketplace, but you can't, this authority can't, or who can be them, can't continue as it is. Because you're actually paying extra money anyway, because you're using agency staff to deal with it. So you know, it can't continue as is. So if you do the right thing and increase the wages and hopefully get more people to come into it, that's a move in it is a move in the right direction anyhow. And at the end of the day, it's up to the individual who deal with the bill control whether they want to use it. And that's a financial thing. So I think what we're doing is the correct way forward.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. Councillor Pearson.
Kind of playing devil's advocate, is it a statutory function? I mean, is it something we need to do? If it's now actually out there for other organisations?
Yes.
Is it something that we need?
So there are elements of, so there's a statutory base for building control. Aspects of building control that can only be delivered by local authority building control services.
Yeah.
But we are in the marketplace, so there is a volume of work that is available to not only our service, but to approved inspectors.
Councillor Price first.
Okay.
The daft thing is that a lot of the private firms that do these inspections have to get the final right off anyway from building control. So, you know, we ought to just get on and do the job properly. And I mean, I suppose I ought to declare it as well, because I use building control and I found their service actually first class.
Yeah.
You know, answering emails same day, arranging visits within 24 hours. So I've never had any problem, but you know, I've seen some of the packages that some of the building control officers have gone off to, you can't blame them personally. You know, because, but it's the same, it's another corner, isn't it, to the same thing with housing officers, environmental health officers and planners, and you know, it's very difficult when you've got a young family not to accept an extra 10 grand a year. You know, I'm not saying this will give us the ability to give 10 grand a year, but it'll be enough, I think. And I think from today, we'll be sending the message to the existing staff that we believe in this service and we intend to stick with it. Because I think unless we sort of confirm that today, you know, we're going to end up with coming back again with another report in 3 months' time. You know, we need to say we want to make this work, and whatever Jeremy needs to make it work, then we've got to give him the tools. So I support the 8%, even though it'll probably affect me one day.
So you're removing the recommendation. Thank you.
I'll second that then, because I was going to move it.
Oh, right, okay. Okay, everyone in favour? That's unanimous again. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Jeremy. I hope you find out some information from that webinar. Well, you probably missed it this morning, but it's repeated. Oh, 11 o'clock. Oh, well, just thank you. Just in time for a cup of coffee beforehand. Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. Right, back then to item 8, the corporate plan delivery highlight report, and over to you, Nina. I know you've been waiting for this all morning.
Thank you, Chair. Members, you may recall that in December 2021, you were all invited to a workshop where we were looking to refresh the corporate plan, mainly in light of lots of external factors that had gone on. And during that presentation, all of the new heads of service who have been recruited in September presented their proposed programmes to support the delivery of your corporate plan, and all of those were endorsed at that time. This is the first time that the PMO presented a report in this format. Its intention is to provide members with an assurance that we are providing projects and change activity across all 4 objective areas. So feedback on the report, the style of it today, observations, areas missing would be very welcome. There are 44 strands that are noted in this report, and I have no intention of going through those line by line today unless you wish me to do so. I'm hoping that will be a no. On page 3 of the report, we've tried to demonstrate how all of our activity hangs together in the authority. We had an audit which was saying they weren't quite sure how that golden thread came through. So the pyramid is there to describe and set out for you exactly all of those activities that are going on. So last week, as an example, we had the Policy Development Committee, where they approved all the service plans, which capture the operational improvements that are ongoing in the organisation. And the projects, the 44 that we noted earlier, these tend to be where you've got multiple services, have high costs associated, and medium to long term in their delivery. They tend to be more complicated and have an impact, hopefully positively on our reputation, but could be negatively as well. So we need to ensure that those communications are sound. And what we've tried to set out in the report is how they move through those 4 phases. It was noted last week, they didn't realise how perhaps sometimes complicated it is in actually initiating a project and planning for it before you actually get into the delivery phase. And Donna's highlighted exactly that this morning with the carbon plan, where you have to get through lots of hoops to get your strategy in place first of all. I've met with one member sat around the table today also to try and look at our performance measures. I think it's noted that perhaps they've been a bit backward looking and a little bit reflective, whereas we want to introduce the measures whereby we're driving performance and improvement forward. And we've put some proposals of new recommendations in there, but we're also going to do some further work with members to test that. So the recommendation really is just for you to note the reports and just to provide you with an assurance, but I'm happy to take any questions. Hopefully I'll be able to answer any that you present, but I'm lucky that I've still got some heads of service in the room with me as well today who may bail me out if I'm not looking after that programme directly. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Nina. Could I say it's really good to have it presented like this so that we can actually see what's happening in the overall picture rather than just looking at individual things, because you've put down basically the whole gambit of what we're about. So thank you for that. Any questions or any points anybody wants to raise? Councillor Lane.
Chairman, I'd like to make a point again, please.
Of course.
On page 46. Because I mean, it's saying here about the amount of second homes from 1st of April 20 to 2022, gone from 1729 to 1717. Was that 50, is it? 50 homes, is it? For 2 years. But the reality is, I mean, that's not a large increase, and that actually could go the other way again in a minute, because it could change back. You've got probably people using Airbnb and all that stuff. But also, I mean, there's some talking about stopping homes going into holiday lets, which I can understand because of the planning system. But the planning system is actually allowing holiday homes to go into permanent homes. So I'm just wondering where the balance is for that going forward. And because I think, you know, you're trying to stop one thing and you actually create another because you're allowing holiday homes to go into permanent homes.
I ought to have kept Jeremy here a little bit longer.
Yeah, I think you ought to have been out before you did, because I mean, that's the point I made there, because you're looking at it from a practical point of view. I'm thinking, hang on a minute, 1 minute you're trying to stop it, and the other you can do the opposite to it.
But the local plan chair doesn't say you can convert holiday homes into permanent ones. It says there's a whole checklist.
Then
And you've got to go through a viability sort of exercise to show that it's no longer viable as a holiday unit.
But they are allowing it, aren't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, there is a process, so it's.
It's been made, Chairman, in reality, it's been made easier to go back into permanent residential.
There's been no changes to policy in that regard. And some holiday units have only been permitted as holiday units because they're as an exception to the normal residential policies that we have. And so some of those do have conditions on that say they shall not be used other than as holiday units. Where an application comes in to remove that condition, then the planners, as with any application, are balancing up the considerations And on some of those applications, I've no doubt some have been approved, and I've no doubt some have been refused. But one of the things that they will take into account is the overall housing, problem that we have at the moment. That is a material planning consideration that we take into account. And just in relation to the figures, this shows the second homes, it doesn't show the holiday homes, I don't believe, the holiday lets. And the government is consulting at the moment on changes that will introduce a registration scheme, and also, as you say, it's a requirement to gain planning permission before you change the property from permanent residential into a holiday let. But at the moment, that's all up for consultation, and we don't have any detail as to what that legislation might look like at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Right, councillor Petrinas and then councillor Pearson.
Well, it's great to see the great, all the activity that's going on, because clearly it's hiring an extra 100 officers on in Kent, because I don't know how else to get it all done. Because we tend to here to see individual reports about little facets of the council's activities, one bit at a time, and look at it piecemeal rather than seeing the broader, the whole breadth of what the council's about. So it's good to have a report like this to show, the future development of the organisation as a whole. Is this like a one-off, or is it going to be a periodic thing, and then linked to the performance report to show how they're progressing? Is that right?
Well, I think it's down to what members want from the organisation, really. We're putting all of the projects into Pentana, Covalent, as you will remember it. So we could produce reports as and when you want. It'll just be a case of pumping it out. But I think it is important to see everything in the round, and we really want to know from members what it is you want from this. Do you want it quarterly? Tony and I have got a bit of work really to dovetail this together, because we've still got the existing performance report, so how we make that marry. But it's within your gift to tell us how you'd like to see it and how often, really.
Go on.
Because of its length and density, I don't think we need it too often, and I don't think it would be worth actually adding on to a quarterly performance report, because people just probably wouldn't need it. Although hopefully some interested members. But certainly need it periodically, I would have thought. I don't know. Other members might have an idea of it frequently.
I would have thought that, Tim, as well. Councillor Pearson was coming in, but this is probably on the same point. Could I ask, or?
I was going to support what.
Oh, you're going to, okay, so
Well,
I'll come to you first, then to councillor Knight.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an excellent report. Honestly, it's great to see the stuff laid out like this. In terms of frequency, I would agree that we don't want them meeting. But maybe when certain milestones have been achieved, it's worth highlighting that and within the context of the whole thing. And possibly other than that, anything annual or it's more clear. I had an extra comment to make though on.
Can we just deal with this one issue, and then I'll come back to you. I think two people wanted to say something on this issue, so councillor Knight and then councillor Spear.
Just very briefly, I would, I believe, totally support councillor Petrinos, but I would look to perhaps the officer to actually say what would actually be not cumbersome to deliver and what would actually be effective in delivering the information. Would it be 6 monthly? I don't know.
But also,
steer on itself, really. So,
well, it may be that the portfolio holder would like to present the report. It doesn't necessarily mean that I need to sit here, which would be great. I'd rather not. So, if Malcolm, for example, wanted to present the regeneration and economic growth, Councillor Lofthouse or Councillor Pearson in terms of the environmental enhancement, it is the delivery of your plan. So there's nothing wrong with you saying, Nina, I'd like you to provide a report and an update on that programme, and you come and present it. So, and you're more aligned to it, and you're passionate about delivering your service area. So again, it may be that there's something gone on with one of the projects or a variety of the projects, or those benefits are starting to be realised, and it would be great to give an update to the committee, but also the wider community. So again, it might be something you wish to consider in terms of the separate programmes.
Yeah, good point. Councillor Spearman, what's his comment?
Thank you, Chair. I support all that's been said. I'd like to congratulate Nina and her team for such an easy to read, way it's set out, and you know, the whole organisation. She does really good report. I would suggest that maybe annual would be enough. And like somebody has said, if anything major happens or something else comes up, then we can have an extra report. But I would have thought annually is enough. Thank you.
Okay, if I could just suggest that perhaps it is annual like this, because it gives us the whole picture. But in the meantime, the suggestion you made, Nina, of looking at particular areas with the person who is the lead member might be a very good way of going forward. So that members need to see the whole picture, but then we can home in on a particular aspect periodically, really. Did you want to come in, Councillor Nelson?
There's a question. Actually, under 1.9, we've got these 4 sections here where we've got a scoreboard.
Yeah.
So I can understand it, but how does the scoreboard work? I mean, is it a number out of the 44, or is it a percentage, or what's it actually telling us?
So from page 9 onwards, there's more detail on each of those 44 projects. And the objectives are set out in the final column. So you've got financial security, customer focus, environment, and North Devon Futures. It's a little bit subjective, but I've gone through each of those and sort of tested it a bit with the heads of service and just put a cross against each one where we felt, although it's predominantly in one of those programmes, it's still got a nod to the other objectives as well. And it was quite interesting that actually the scorecard was quite balanced in terms of those objectives that were being achieved across the board. So although it might sit in Sarah's customer focus or Mark's environmental enhancement, actually customer focus was still being ticked, or it had a nod to North Devon's future just by a wider range of benefits coming out from it.
Okay. So the scores are from out of the 44 objectives.
Yes.
Yeah. Great.
Out of the 44 projects.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's clearer for me. Thank you very much.
Councillor Black.
Yes, I believe you still do the ILAC reports and any company which shows you where you've proved with, you know, achieving what you want to achieve.
Yeah, we do regular activity reports to SMT. What we really need, the last year's really been getting the formulation of the plans, just having some governance around it. And there's further work really to be done in terms of those critical paths in those projects. So some of them are very clear, some of them still need a little bit more work to take forward. So yes, they do all get reported to SMT.
But different people got different areas where they've got concerns, where they need to address them. Is there an access to that so they can understand it, so to speak?
Yeah, so you will have seen separate reports come, won't you? So Mark's example, his infrastructure project, where you're looking for a big capital spend, comes as a separate report because it's pertinent and part of the rules in which we operate that it comes through.
Yeah, I see. I would agree. This is well laid out. I just raise a point in probably Ken made that I highlight a bit on it. On page 61. You may highlight it, Ken, in your next urgent decisions. See under page 61, Safer Streets. It says they're in delivery, and it says interventions are commencing. Street marshals contracts are in place as of the 1st of November 2021. And I'm assuming, is that night time? Because the question I'm just asking that now is because of this toilet job in the cattle boss. I'm just wondering, if there's concerned about the car park, the toilet, how does that balance up with this here, Safer Streets, and it looks like you're paying these marshals to do work. Now, I presume it's night times, is it?
No,
That's during the day as well.
that's daytime as well.
Okay,
In relation to the cattle market toilets, before they were temporarily closed at Christmas,
Yes.
those street marshals were patrolling those toilets every hour.
Well, okay, yeah, right, thank you, Ken. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to be in a minority of one because I think this is the most important document we've got. And I think it should come every quarter at least.
Yeah.
And that's just my, I'm not asking for a lot of work because it's here now.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of updating it. One little thing would be easy if we actually had the priorities listed on each page, didn't you? So you know, I mean, from an IT point, that's easy to do as well. You've got to keep flicking back just to refresh your memory. But I think, I think I made the point before that our old performance reports did become a little bit of a sort of a bit of a beauty parade between lead members, trying to, especially from RC. So I'm not suggesting we go back to that, but we've now got something that's really not a performance report, but it's more about the financial situation of the council at any one time. Whereas this is for me, you've got to be, should sit in parallel with it all the way through. But that's just my.
Chair, can I share that view. I think, as Nina highlighted, members said to us, right, this is our corporate plan. And these are the programmes that we want to put in place to deliver that corporate plan. And this is how you tell whether we are actually delivering on those programmes. So I personally would feel not that comfortable if we went beyond the 6 monthly review of that programme. And if it's quarterly, that fits in with our normal timetable now. And, you know, we will fit with that and we'll meet it. But I think if we went annually, or anything longer than 6 months between each report coming to you, I think if we were auditors and we were sat here, we'd be saying, actually, well, what oversight have you as members got on the programmes and whether they've been delivered? And I think annually is probably a bit too much. But, you know, 6 monthly or quarterly, I think we can, well, subject to any assessment, we can live with that. And I think you should be getting those reports on a regular basis, so that you can say, okay, well, that programme's going well, or it's not going well. Why are we drifting on that one? Why aren't we progressing that particular project and so on? We need that oversight from you guys, I think.
Okay, I think I've been persuaded. Right, I've got 5 hands or 4 hands going up for a
So my original
Yes.
comment, but are we still talking about this? I mean, I think if we've got measures down here, it'd be useful to know if we're achieving them, right? And if there are any delays as to why we can't achieve them. So I think those would be points when you would certainly want to bring this back and say we have issues here, we have problems here, or we're well ahead and we're making progress, so that we can actually see it as a moving document. So yes, I guess in that context, quarterly would be good, because then you could be reporting on whether those measures are being achieved, and that's fair enough. Yeah, I'm also persuaded.
Thank you. Okay, councillor Loftus and councillor Spear.
Well, I would agree with what Ken's been saying, that they do need to be more regular. And I'm just wondering whether perhaps each lead member should have, if it's possible, to separate their section out, sent to them so they can concentrate on that part. Because although they need to know what, it's an overall thing, what's happening elsewhere, the good is that the section that they're looking at is highlighted and sent to them direct. And then you can pick up.
Report on it.
Yeah, and also you pick up the bits that where you need to improve things, and obviously congratulate the bits that we're doing well.
And I totally support the idea of the actual member doing the reporting.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it should be. I think we should be doing it.
You certainly would, wouldn't you? Okay, over to you, councillor Spear. Did you want to add to that?
I'm just saying, I have been convinced that annually isn't enough, so I'm happy to go with 6 months or quarterly, whichever I feel appropriate.
And can I go back to what my original question was going to be?
Yeah, go on.
On page 65, actually, it's a comment. It talks about when the environment bill has been passed. Well, it's now an act. But there are issues with the act where we're still not quite sure what they're actually going to, what their plans are. Yeah, they've made the statement, this is what James we're going to do with the House of Home, but it's actually an act, so I'm going to write these updated.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. Anyone else want to make any comments? Yes, councillor Church.
Yeah, I quite agree with what other members were saying about the portfolio holder reporting on their own chunk bit, supported by Nina, of course. But, and also fine about quarterly reporting, but that kind of raises a question about how it gets integrated with the performance management report, because it needs to be two things together. It needs, because you need to have this report and then something saying whether there's a problem here or not,
Yeah.
what's going on, how, you know.
So we can resource it.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to know not only what's happening, but how well it's happening, or is it not happening? And where there are problems and where there are successes. So it really needs to just be one package, doesn't it? Rather than two different bits, but unfortunately broken up into different portfolio holders doing their own chunk. Because after all, that's what they get special responsibility loans.
They aren't all members of this committee,
That's
one of the,
irrelevant.
well, maybe.
It should be.
Councillor, yeah, maybe, councillor Lane.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd be quite happy to support quarterly council approach, second that, if we don't want to go later. And I'm just looking at then page 73, where it talks about the agenda item, and then it starts on what the agenda item 8, which is on page 73. But when you go back to the start, I'm just wondering where the rest of it is, because you said page says number 1, it didn't say anything else. I'm just wondering where the report is between 1 and 5. Normally you start saying the recommendations and the rest of it, you don't say that, yeah?
Sorry.
Talks with item 8, when you go on to item 8, talks with policy, which is on page 39. Then it goes on to the end of it.
Sorry, councillor, it's probably my fault and naivety in pulling the format
Because you only
all
put
together.
normally, you know, recommendations in at the end of it.
Yeah.
So it's missing.
The recommendations are on page 44.
It's done through the report, not just at the end.
Yeah.
Page 44, page 1, page 44.
Yeah.
Reasons for recommending.
Section 2 and section 3.
That we note the progress made to date on delivering these programs is basically it. But what we're basically saying this morning is that this is a really good report. It's something that we would like to see more often. I think too, it might be good if it also goes to say the policy committee, so that they are fully aware, if we're particularly if we're integrating the work programs, etc. For them to have a look at as well.
The draft of this report went through the policy committee last week.
Okay, fine.
And if you are looking to tie it in with the performance report, then that report comes here quarterly, then it goes to policy development quarterly, and then goes to full council, so all members will then get to see that report on the same cycle. So we will have a separate conversation outside of this as to how we embed that into that report, that you'll then receive that in line with the performance and management.
Thanks, and councillor Craft. Thank you for that. Are we happy then to note the report, and we have made some suggestions, which I'm sure you would take away.
So to be clear, Chair, are we talking, are we kind of, is this about portfolios holders reporting their own chunks quarterly?
Yes.
If at all possible, I would say.
We need to look at how we do that, because the lead members don't necessarily coincide with the titles of the programs that we have.
Yeah.
Some of them do, but not right.
This is what I was referring to. Okay, so it could be,
We're doing a bit of work on that one.
What the golden thing?
okay, we all in favour?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Nina.
Thank you.
I said we'd be gentle. Moving on then, now we do have one of our lead members who has done a very good report for us, which is the Litter Working Party Group report. So I'm going to hand over to you, councillor Pearson. And thank you for your, oh, of course, it's on then. It's not, it's
Supplemental.
a supplementary document.
Yeah. I guess I'm going to do a little reminder of why we came into an existence, really, why we had a working party. The quality of the local environment is important for residents and visitors. Does it look cared for? Do people feel safe? Do businesses consider it an attractive location for investment? NDC is a principal litter authority, one of a number of authorities who have a duty under the Environment Protection Act to ensure that their land is, as far as practicable, kept clear of litter and refuse. And there's been a recent update with, giving the authority the power to serve a litter clearing notice on any land requiring the owner or occupier to clear litter from that land. And if it's not cleared, the authority can enter it, clean it up, and then reclaim that costs. That's kind of a new thing. In order to keep areas clear of litter requires a system of good, effective management with accurate and systematic monitoring. In the report before you, it makes clear that there are a number of improvements the council can make to their litter management processes. Infrastructure is the portmanteau word used to describe the type, capacity and placement of litter bins. And it was clear to the litter group from the outset that the very useful mapping tool we have available to us did not reflect accurately the number and position of litter bins throughout the district. In order to make progress in optimising bin placement and litter collection, it was felt that this needed rectifying as a key first step. We've had conversations with the IT crowd and the litter team leaders, and not only is this now being addressed as a priority for the litter team, there is also a process and app being developed to facilitate reporting of map mismatches or of the state of bins. Processes and bin infrastructure are important, but so too is messaging, and people give little thought to litter or recycling disposal. So in those few seconds, the messages and other visual clues need to make it easy. Comms will be playing an important role in this. The report itself recommends processes and procedures, working in partnership with parishes, encouraging positive behaviour and allocating and monitoring pilot areas as and when resources allow. So basically, we're talking about we need to improve the process. So it's not we're not asking to spend money on that. So just to make ourselves more efficient. I'd like to, I think this is my report or our report for the end of the working group, really. So I'd like to thank my fellow councillors on the litter working group for their ideas, for sharing their enthusiasm, their frustrations, and in some cases for taking direct action for clearing the litter. And thanks are due to the officers from the Environmental Protection and Enhancement teams for the support they were able to give us. It's been a difficult year for them, with severely stretched resources and challenging littering behaviours at large, which is one of the reasons why it's been a report written by members rather than officers. I particularly want to thank Ray Jones for introducing me to a fascinating though frustrating subject and for his encouragement along the way. When I came to this council, I was completely ignorant of the psychology of litter and have learned quite a bit. And I believe the litter group had too. And thanks to Paul Burton for help with forms and processes and for feedback on the report itself. There's a long way to go. This report, we recommend the report to you. Note the new processes are already underway. And we have fingers crossed that the bid for the harbour bins is successful.
Right, thank you very much.
Thank you for the report, Councillor Pearson. The use of bins varies dramatically within the tourism area, according to the time of year, quite obviously. And you know, I thank the authority for providing, certainly my own ward, providing extra bins during the summer season. But the problem there is that they're not really suitable for two things. One is the tremendous upsurge in pizza boxes and fish and chip boxes, etc. And there's no facility also at the moment for recycling. So I really, you know, as we've talked before, that we really need to be looking at that, putting our act together with the recycling of the waste. Unfortunately, it's down to education there as well, because people tend not to put the right article in the right coloured bin or in the.
Which is why that visual messaging is so important.
That's right. So there is an education system that they have to put there. But I welcome the report, but as I said, we do need to look at what goes on in the tourism area.
Thank you. Councillor Knight.
Yeah, again, I'd like to celebrate the amount of meetings and discussion we've had. There has been quite a few meetings. One critical thing that I see that was mentioned earlier, which is service plans. I would like to think that we, I don't see this report as an end point. I see this as a starting point moving forward, and how we get specific actions into the next service plan or alterations in policy. Because there are certain things, I mean, I was just going to pick out one example. We requested many moons ago cameras for the officers' cars because their time is super small amount of time to actually try and get or chase up convictions or chasing up littering, etc. And sorry, cameras have been requested several times, and several times it's gone around the system, and then there's not been any funding. So I'd like to look at, maybe we take this report forward and we can look at some specifics that could go in the next year's service plans.
Thank you, Councillor Knight. Yeah. We'll come back to that in a second if you want to do Clive. Councillor Loftus, I think, to
Thank you.
follow that up.
Well, that's very good sport, very detailed, lots of work gone into it, obviously. And presumably it's the start of the process that then needs to be taken out across the whole of the region for what we're doing here. I know I've said this before. I just wonder how we might be able to persuade some of the bigger retailers to take more interest in cleaning their areas, not just their own land, but the land that joins their land, where their litter ends up. Because it doesn't matter how many bins we put there, it still ends up in the hedges and under the underpasses and everything else. And I wonder how we can actually achieve a result with them in terms of getting them to have their own members staff going out and picking. And the other thing is how they can control their funds so that they remain on their own land and not in the only garden, wherever it might be, because that is a problem as well, and that costs money and time and effort, and it doesn't make our town look that good. And we need to, I'm thinking of Barnstable, but it obviously does apply to Ilfracombe, South Mole, Linz and things as well. So, you know, the whole area needs to be dealt in that respect. I'm just wondering what powers we might have to persuade these big companies in particular first to heed the need to pick up the litter and encourage their customers not to litter. First,
I think we do some comms which encourages people to pack responsibly, but it needs to be ongoing because people soon forget, don't they?
A classic example of the forgetting is we have tried to engage with Petron. We've had a Joe, not quite frustrated really about the lack of joined up thinking with it really. We did have some limited success, and then it went back to being a problem. The businesses can sign, we can get them to sign a voluntary code, a litter code. And I think we should do that. I think that's one of the ways in which we should engage with the business community. Again, the Environment Act itself, there are things coming out of that which are requiring businesses to be responsible for the disposable plates and cups and bits and bobs things. And I believe there'll be sanctions. Well, I rather hope there'll be sanctions if they don't follow those. So that's the stuff that's coming out of the Act. As I say, if they persistently allow their land to be littered, then we can go in, clean it up and charge them. So that's
on their own, isn't it?
That's, yes, on their own, but yes, you're right.
Yeah, a lot of things. So travels out.
But all of this also, the other aspect of this is enforcement, which we keep coming back to, and we don't, the powers of enforcement are really important, and we don't delegate, we don't look at delegating to a great extent, I don't think. I mean, we should be looking at some more of our officers being able to undertake some of the CSAS training, I think. And having cameras in the cars, I mean, what is the issue here? I mean, it's, we've asked and asked and asked and nothing happens. We've asked for mobile CCTV and nothing happens, because these things are proven to be a support and help to get some enforcement activity undertaken with less.
Just on that point, Chair, I mean, I have mentioned this a couple of times when this has been raised, but cameras and their use is extremely highly regulated. We can't undertake covert surveillance unless we've got an order from the magistrates court allowing us to do so, apart from a couple of very specific exceptions. And that really does tie our hands in relation to the use of covert cameras. And, you know, what I suggest is, you know, we can look at it again. We are providing officers with body worn cameras, but they are overt cameras. But covert cameras can be really difficult to.
But we've got them. Everyone's got, there's so many people who've got covert cameras in their cars. We've all, I mean.
But we are a public authority. We are different to an individual. An individual can do that, and they can upload the pictures to the websites, the piece put forward, etc., etc. But for us as a local authority, we are regulated by what's called RIPA, and that requires us to get a court order if we're going to carry out covert surveillance. Overt surveillance is fine. So we can put a camera in a lay-by, for instance, and then put a sign beside it saying there's a camera in this lay-by. That's overt. But that's not going to then capture your flight tippers, because they're going to be put off by the sign and go somewhere else. So it's a real problem for us. But there might be ways to pick our way through that regulation and do something. As I said, we're equipping our officers with body worn cameras. They will be overt because they'll have a sign on their chest saying camera on. We have CCTV in operation. That is overt. But actually covert cameras stuck in hedgerows somewhere, or an officer stuck in a hedgerow, ready and waiting to pounce on somebody. So that's overt, that's covert surveillance, and that's something that we can only do if we get the magistrate's court order, and it's highly regulated even when we do that.
In which case, this delegation of authority, perhaps we should look at more of our officers having the authority to address the issues they see if someone's littering or if somebody's acting.
Yeah, we can look at that. I mean, we do give officers other powers that would not normally sit within their remit. So, for instance, our CEOs, the car park wardens, they have certain powers to enforce some of the rules that exist in the town centre under the orders that we've imposed.
So if they, for example, see somebody entering their ashtray as their car, could they go and start a fine?
I'm not sure which powers they have got. So
that would be the sort of thing that I would expect them to be able to do. I mean, that sort of thing must be quite frustrating to see that happen if you haven't got the powers. So I would like to see certainly our car park attendants having that, because they will see that sort of behaviour.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can look at that. Like I said, we have extended the powers that they've got beyond the car park orders.
We do need to be for our enforcement, I think.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a couple of people who've been trying to get integrated, so that's okay.
Just coming back to the dash cams. So therefore, if the vehicle has a sign that says it has a camera, then that would be allowable. Because we have just asked, we have asked several times specifically just for dash cams, just for the vehicles. So I believe the vehicle has to have a sign, and then that is allowable.
As well as RIPA, you've also got data protection regulations as well. So you have to be specific as to why you're capturing that data. So as I said, there may be ways of picking our way through the regulations to do whatever we want to do. But it's not a simple case of just going into Halfords and buying a couple of dash cams and sticking it in the van.
Just my source of slight frustration is that other authorities that we have this, so maybe we need to.
We have dash cams in our vehicles now,
Yeah.
in a lot of our vehicles now. What we have to be clear about is why we're using the data.
Yeah,
So if, for instance, somebody drives into the back of one of our vans and is captured by a dash cam, then that's probably okay. You can use that to notify the insurers, etc. But if we're looking to use it for evidence to maintain a successful prosecution, then what we've got to make sure is that we've got all the regulations too.
yeah.
Councillor Loftus, did you want to come back? Or
Well, yeah, it's only really that maybe, not so much in terms of capturing the actual act of littering, but in terms of coming back to what I was saying about trying to encourage retailers to take more responsibility for where their packaging ends up. It's that when we get litter groups, like locally, we've got Residents Against Pollution litter group, and they quite frequently take photos of litter that's been put in certain places and have it reported so we can pick it up. But it's to perhaps ask the councillors in the areas to regularly take photos where litter is close to retailers, big ones in particular, and then report that back to the council. They can use that as part of the pressure we put on them to say, you know, come on, get out and clean it up.
right, well, we've got a series of recommendations that the report has actually brought to us. Could somebody move that we accept those? Yes, councillor Loftus and councillor Knight has seconded. All those in favour? It's unanimous. And could I say thank you very much to councillor Pearson, and also I think we've had a little bit of help from Georgie, was it? And
Oh, yes, Georgina did the harbour master did the report, the whole report on the harbour. So yes, obviously we need to thank her for that.
And thanks to her too, and to all the members of the litter group, because I know you had lots of meetings.
I think
it's a good piece of work.
Yeah, we won't be meeting again as a group, but I do think we'll be following up some of these things individually.
I think that's important, yes. Thank you. Right then, going back then to the agenda, I think we're now on to item 11, which is the urgent decisions, which are on page 81 to 84. Could we move that we note them?
Chair.
No, I didn't want to speak to them, yeah.
Only to make a very quick point, the one that's on there, the urgent decision that was taken was to try and increase the payments to the hosts for the Ukrainian scheme. And it's just to make the point that shortly after we took this decision, before we implemented it, the government increased the payments anyway. So you'll see on the next agenda, another urgent decision implementing that the government scheme effectively. So this wasn't actually implemented in total, it was replaced.
Can you just add, I mean, the one thing was about £500, was it? A month?
Yes.
Yeah, in another, it was said in £100. Another one, what's it looking?
This was looking to increase it by £100.
Okay, yeah, but this is the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm trying to think what the latest one
Well, but
was.
it said 500.
No, 500 is the latest.
Yeah, 500.
500,
Yeah.
which is total payment. So the payment was 350 a month.
Yeah.
This urgent decision was to increase it by 100. Whereas now the latest one is to say actually the payment is £500 a month. So it's higher than the increase on the 100, but it's the new scheme that's coming up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Sure, is that per family, the payment?
Yes, Chair.
yes.
Per family, thank you.
Okay, are we all happy to note that?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, right. Good. Did you want a formal members to propose and second, or you?
No, that's fine.
That's right. Okay, so thank you very much, members. That comes to the formal end of our meeting this morning. We do want to actually ask the public to leave now, and then we will have a little informal chat in. Thank you.
Is it,